Hello and welcome to a brand new build guide video. In this video I will be showcasing my Poison Blade Shadow Step Rogue with you. This build can do all content including PvP against level 100s of the top builds and classes. So let's get into it. Starting out, we take Fundamental Puncture, and we really just want the hitting an enemy at least with 2 blades makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. This goes hand in hand with our helmet to keep us alive. Our first damaging ability, we put 5 points into Twisting Blades, as well as taking Improved Twisting Blades. Enemies are dazed while impaled with Twisting Blades. Coming down, we take 3 points in the Sturdy, as well as 3 points in the Siphoning Strikes. I do believe Siphoning Strikes is worth taking now that it has been buffed with the latest patch. Come down, take our Shadow Step, only 1 point into here, and as well as taking Methodical Shadow Step. Enemies damaged by Shadow Step are stunned for 2 seconds. We take Weapon Mastery, as well as 1 point into Concussive, and 1 point into Trick Attacks. We then come and get Agile, and 1 point into Mending Obscurity, because we do get Stealth. Our Stealth ability now, we take Concealment. We want Subverting Stealth. The skill that breaks concealment always makes enemies vulnerable for 6 seconds. This will help keep us alive in groups of monsters. We then take Poison Trap. I like Subverting Poison Trap. You deal 10% increased poison damage to enemies standing inside your Poison Trap. We have tons of stuns with this build, so it allows us to stun lock the enemy in our Poison Trap. We then take 3 points in the Exploit. And I have 3 points from my amulet into Malice, so I took the 3 points from here and I'm using it elsewhere. Precision Imbuement now, 9% increased crit chance with your imbued skills. We're always imbuing. We're using Poison Imbuement, specifically the Blended Poison Imbuement. Crit strikes with poison imbued skills deal 75% increased poison damage. Our poison passives, we will take Deadly Venom, as well as Debilitating Toxins. I do not believe Alchemical Advantage is worth it. Coming down now, we take 1 point into Adrenaline Rush, as well as 3 points into Haste. I like this for the added movement speed and increased attack speed in certain situations. Our key passive, we will take Victimize. Dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to 35% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 23% of the original damage to him and surrounding enemies. We take this key passive because combined with our helmet aspect, it allows us to get health back every time we activate our Victimize key passive. Before we get into the gear, I just want to say there will be a D4 planner build guide in the description, so you will be able to follow along and know the affixes you want to look for on your gear with that. Starting off with the helmet, we take the aspect Explosions from the key passive, heal you for 215 life for each enemy damage up to a maximum of 646 life. Like I said, with our key passive and this gives us tons of survivability. Coming to our chest now, you gain 0.5% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 30%. So max roll, and this is probably the best defensive aspect in the game. Our gloves now, we will use the basic skills, gain 30% increased attack speed. Basics are a big part of our build, so having the most amount of attack speed we can with them really helps for the quality of life with the build. Onto the pants now. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 4.5 seconds. Like I said, we're always using basic attacks, so we'll always have the 20% damage reduction. To our boots now, Shadow Step has an additional charge. Killing an enemy with Shadow Step refunds the charge and increases the damage of Shadow Step by 4% up to 20%. We really just want the additional charge. The added bonus damage is just a plus. Onto our crossbow now. We will be using the Twisted Blades. Orbit for a short time after they return to you, dealing 30% of Twisted Blades damage. Return per hit. Based on the distance the blades return, the orbit damage is increased up to 60% of the returned damage. I like it here because we get that added burst with it being in this slot. Our dagger now, we use Condemnation. Your core skills deal 40% increased damage when you spend 3 combo points. Your basic skills using this weapon have 30% chance to generate 3 combo points. This when fighting, you'll see I'm always throwing out Max combo point twisting blades, which allows our damage to really skyrocket. You know, you can reach 1 million with this build, no problem. Next weapon now, we are using attacking enemies with a basic skill, increases the damage of your next core skill. Each cast by 10% up to 30%. Goes hand in hand really well with our build and throwing basic attacks. Onto our ring slots now. Critical strikes with poison and abuse skills have up to 10% chance to create a toxic pool that deals 5,000 poison damage over 3 seconds to enemies within. While standing in the pool, your poison imbuement skills have no cooldown and no charge limit. This is extremely important with this build to allow us to burst down the enemy quickly. Because we have a lot of crit strike damage with imbued skills, we really want to be imbued every time we're attacking. Also, when attacking with your basic attack and combined with our next aspect, it will also proc the pool and allowing you to proc the cooldown reduction. Our next aspect, every third cast of puncture is poison imbued with 35% of the normal potency. Our potency is at 200 and I believe 75%, 252%, I'm sorry. So that's added 135% to that every third cast. Our amulet now, I'm using this solely for PvP. If I'm going up against like the Uber boss, I will switch to the aspect that gives you more damage the longer you stand still, because you can really stand in there and do some damage with that. But for PvP, I use Becoming Injured, while crowd control grants you Unstoppable for 4 seconds. This effect has a 13-second cooldown. I like this for PvP because the current way the meta is for PvP is whoever has the most stuns wins. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. And Unstoppable really is king when it comes to PvP. So where you can get Unstoppable in your build, you want to. Going over the Malignant Hearts now, we are using the Wrathful Heart. Your damage over time effects are increased by 47% for each different crowd control effect on the target. As you can see, we have tons of crowd control with this build, allowing our damage over time effects to really ramp up. I do not recommend running Barber with this build. It screws up the damage, though you can get pretty big damage numbers with it. I don't believe it's the best in slot. Our next, we're using the Brutal Heart. I like this for PvP. Unfortunately, a lot of people are running this in their builds. So if you're not really running it, you're kind of just lacking behind. You become immune for 4 seconds after you lose more than 20% of your life in a single hit. It has a 70-second cooldown, but honestly, when you're fighting, it goes by pretty quick. Coming to our last star now, every 5 seconds while above 60% life, core skills cost 484 life instead of your primary resource. Skills that consume life deal 28% increased damage. We're running this because we really don't mind the life cost for that 28% increased damage, because with our victimized key passive, this allows us to heal up really quick and it negates the health cost. Our specialization now, we'll be using combo points because everything's going in threes. As you can see from our items, it just makes sense with this build. Coming to our Paragon board now, I started off and I went up the right side and got our prime node for the 20% damage. Then we got our glyph socket. I used tracker for the added effects on the poison damage before getting our lawless and our skillful node for the added armor and damage. Our first board now, we take the exploit weakness board. I first came up and got our armor node here, the unassailable, before moving on and getting our exploit node for the vulnerable damage there. Then we moved up and got our exploit weakness legendary node before moving on to our hunter killer rare node. After that, we then came over, got our next glyph socket. I'm using combat skills that are critically strike, restore 12% of their energy costs. We're constantly critically striking, so this just makes sense for our build. We then come up and get our artifice node for our 20% vulnerable damage. Really not a fan of this node here, so I did not opt to get it. I will eventually fill out the 5% vulnerable nodes. Coming to our next board now, we will use the Tricks of the Trade board. We will come up and get our lawless node before getting our glyph socket, as well as our next rare node for the damage to elites. In the glyph socket, we are using the efficacy I like it because of the 125% bonus to all rare nodes, as well as the imbuement skills have 20% increased potency. As you can see, I get 40% damage to elites, 150 armor, as well as 25 dexterity just from this glyph right here. I think it's well worth it. Once we fill out our glyph socket here, we move down here and grab our Havoc node for the crit strike damage before moving on and getting our tricks of the trade. Then we move down, grab our Brawler node before moving on to our next board. We will be getting the Cunning Stratagem. I didn't really want to get the Legendary node right off the bat because I wanted to get the next glyph socket. The next glyph that we use is Diminish. This is another one that grants 125% bonus to all rare nodes in range, as well as gives us damage reduction against vulnerable enemies. As you can see, another 125 armor, 25 dexterity, and core skill damage there. As you can see, we get our finisher nodes and our lawless node for the added armor. We then move up and go on to get our dominant node for the core skill damage. The basic skill damage is just the added bonus. We then moved on and got our denial for the added armor. Don't really like the elements, so don't worry about getting your strength for that. As you can see, I'm level 90. I will be moving on and getting the Cunning Stratagem legendary node, as well as getting the Slayer and Fundamentals node before hitting level 100. Once I do that, I will just be filling out the different nodes that I have slotted in here. I won't be going on to a different board. Well, there you have it. There is my level 90 Poison Blades Rogue build guide. I don't know if I really want to take it to level 100 or make a level 100 build guide video, just because it's not really going to change much from this. But if you want me to do a build guide video, make sure to give me a like, and that will let me know to do it in the future. I am going to be working on a alternate class, the Sorceress, because she's going to be getting some buffs. We're going to be checking out the Fire Sorceress in a future build guide video. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe so you're not missing out on the latest content. And if you want to watch me live, come over to twitch.tv/huffdog94. And you can come hang out and ask me about the build. Until then, I'll see you on the next video.